Tonight at 10, the UK's highest daily coronavirus death toll since the start of the pandemic. More than 1,300 people have died. Another record number of new cases too, as hospitals across the UK struggle to cope. In London, a major incident has been declared. The brother of a 36-year-old man who died on Sunday while they were self-isolating together urges everyone, young and old, to take the virus seriously.
Believing we're of an age where it's not going to affect us, we didn't take the appropriate action, and I found him dead in his sleep the following morning at about 6 o'clock.
Long queues in the cold for a COVID vaccine as a third jab, Moderna, is given the go-ahead in the UK. Also on the programme tonight. Cleaning up Capitol Hill, President Trump says he won't attend Joe Biden's inauguration despite promising a peaceful transition.
He indicated he wasn't going to show up at the inauguration. One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on.
The former First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, accuses Nicola Sturgeon of misleading Parliament. These women were stopped and fined by police after driving 5 miles to go for a walk in Derbyshire. How far can you travel in England to exercise in lockdown? And the biggest mismatch in FA Cup history, the PE teacher and refuse collector among the non-league team Marine preparing for their tie against Tottenham.
And coming up in sport on BBC News, without their entire senior squad because of COVID cases, Aston Villa's youngsters take on Liverpool for a place in the 4th round of the FA Cup.
Good evening. The UK has recorded the highest daily coronavirus death toll since the start of the pandemic. 1,325 more people have lost their lives. To add to that grim figure, a record number of new cases, more than 68,000 positive tests were recorded in the past 24 hours. Hospitals across the UK are now under severe pressure, with some treating many more patients than they did during the first peak in April. London and the southeast of England are currently being hit the hardest, with one senior NHS leader saying the situation is off the scale, calling it a winter crisis like no other he has ever seen. Here's our health editor, Hugh Pym.
Two brothers enjoying a swim on a foreign holiday. Exactly a year later, one of them died with COVID-19.
He's a big chap, there's no denying that, but he could swim all day long. You know, he was running on Christmas Day.
James remembers his brother David, who was 36. They both tested positive and were isolating, but David's condition worsened overnight and he didn't survive.
We were going to sit there and rough it out. Well, it didn't work for us. And my advice would be, I don't want to scaremonger people and I don't want to be dramatic, but I think people, if you're in that situation, if you're sat at home and you're starting to really struggle for breath, ring 111.
A post-mortem will try to establish whether there were other factors in David's death. As more lives are lost and case numbers increase, London's mayor has declared a major incident with a call for financial support from the government. Hospitals are so busy that ambulances are delayed handing over patients, with waiting times up 36% in the southeast in December, according to data leaked to BBC News. COVID patient numbers are rising in other regions. Extra staff have been drafted into this intensive care unit in Wolverhampton, including dental specialists.
I didn't really think about how hard it would be, even patient roles to end of life. It's somebody's loved one.
And this Nottinghamshire hospital says the pressure is intensifying.
We're beginning to see that huge increase that London has seen. So we've got 160 patients with COVID in our organisation. That's nearly double the number that we saw in the first wave. Critical care is exceptionally busy, and the colleagues who work here are tired, they're fatigued and they're worn out.
The latest survey of community infections by the Office for National Statistics suggests that last week in Northern Ireland, 1 in 200 people had the virus, with case rates no longer decreasing. In Scotland, it was 1 in 115, with case numbers on the increase. In Wales, 1 in 70, though case rates were coming down. In England, 1 in 50 had the virus. With case numbers on the increase, the worst affected area was London, with 1 in 30. The latest R number range, 1 to 1.4, was higher than the previous estimate. Anything above 1 suggests the virus is accelerating. Vaccinations continue, though there was a long queue and waits in the cold for people in priority groups invited to this clinic for their jabs. It was confirmed that a third vaccine has been approved by regulators. It's made by the US company Moderna, and the government's ordered 17 million doses, though they're unlikely to be available before the spring. Right now, senior health officials are focused on the spread of the virus. They're worried there are more people out and about than during the first lockdown, and they think there could be more than 100,000 new infections per day, including those who haven't been tested. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Well, let's look at the latest government figures in detail. There were 68,053 new coronavirus cases recorded in the latest 24-hour period. The average number of new cases reported per day in the last week is now 59,344. Hospital admissions keep climbing. On average, there were 28,756 COVID-19 patients in hospital in the last week. And today's record death toll, 1,325 deaths. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. It means on average in the past week, 809 deaths were announced every day. It takes the total number of deaths so far across the UK to 79,833. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh is with me now. They're truly terrible figures, and the awful thing is that it's going to get worse.
It will, Sophie. There are now 31,000 COVID patients in hospital across the UK. That's up 50% since Christmas Day and 10,000 higher than at the peak in April. And coronavirus cases are surging, and that has yet to show up in the hospital data because of the lag between infection and people falling seriously ill. So the number of deaths seems certain to keep on rising. Now, I've seen firsthand this week the pressures in intensive care. The stress on hospitals and on staff is greater than at any time during this pandemic. But there is hope. A third COVID vaccine approved today. The Moderna jab is 95% effective against COVID disease. The immunisation programme with the Oxford and Pfizer jabs will be ramped up from Monday. But more than 2 million people a week will need to be immunised if the target of 15 million being offered the jab is to be reached by mid-February. So difficult weeks ahead. The numbers in hospital won't start to fall unless people behave like they did during the first lockdown, Sophie, keeping their distance from others and washing their hands. And tonight the Prime Minister said he said compliance is now more vital than ever, and he urged people to stay at home and protect the NHS.
Fergus, thank you. Well, for those who are most sick, those whose lungs have not been helped by a ventilator, there is another alternative. It's called ECMO. They're specialist intensive care life support machines which pump oxygen into the patient's blood, allowing the lungs to rest. There are only 6 NHS centres in the UK that offer the treatment to a few dozen patients. But now they're under pressure to take on more. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson has been given rare access to an ECMO unit at the Royal Papworth Hospital in Cambridge.
They're the sickest patients we've ever seen, even for patients on ECMO. Is everybody ready?
The patients are very poorly and in bigger numbers than we've ever had them.
These are among the very sickest patients with COVID-19 in the country. And this ward is their last hope. Their lungs are so damaged by the disease that even ventilators haven't helped. And they've come here for the rarest form of life support from a machine known as ECMO. ECMO stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It allows these patients to breathe without using their lungs, giving their lungs a vital rest so that they can recover.
And you can see here, you've got black blood coming out and red blood full of oxygen going back in the patient. I don't know.
This ECMO centre was set up following the swine flu outbreak in 2009, but the coronavirus pandemic is now stretching it almost to the limit. Normally on this ward they have 3 patients on ECMO, but because of the pandemic and the damage that COVID-19 does to the lungs, they have many more. In fact, each of these rooms has a patient on ECMO in it. They say they have 18 patients here today, and they've described it as a super surge.
I know there is a limit that we will reach. I have no idea when that limit will be there. By continuing, extending, there will be a cracking point.
Hello, Savna speaking, can I help?
And as well as treating patients, staff are working around the clock fielding calls from other hospitals. There are a maximum of around 100 ECMO beds in the UK, but there have been 3,000 requests for patient referrals.
It is relentless. So patient after patient after patient, they take a long time to get better. They're the sickest patients we've ever seen, even for patients on ECMO. You know, they're not old patients, they're, you know, a younger cohort. And so it is really, really difficult, and we are all at times finding it quite overwhelming.
Is everybody ready? Yeah, we're going. Roll, ready, steady, roll.
Some patients are in their 20s and 30s, most are older. They have to be strong enough to withstand ECMO, and the work looking after them is gruelling.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Things are very intense. The patients are very poorlier than we've probably ever seen them, and in bigger numbers than we've ever had them. So it's a lot to deal with. We haven't got the staffing numbers to cope with the amount of patients that we have, but we're doing what we can for the patients that we have with the time that we have.
Towards the end of our filming, another 2 patients arrived on the ward. Staff are proud that everyone who meets the criteria for ECMO has so far been offered a bed here. But this extra pressure was hard to handle.
We're not as resilient this time as we were last time, because we've really had no downtime, so to speak. But we still do it because that's what we do.
And what they're doing is saving lives. Through their dedication and determination, perhaps more than half of these patients will eventually awake and go home to their loved ones. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
President Trump has announced he won't be attending the inauguration of his successor, Joe Biden, just hours after promising a peaceful transition. He will become the first US president to miss the ceremony in more than 150 years. But Joe Biden said his decision was a good thing, one of the only things they'd ever agreed on. He called President Trump an embarrassment to the country. Our North America editor, John Sopel, reports.
The words horse and stable door come to mind as contractors are brought in to erect some proper security around the Capitol Hill complex. So alarmingly and easily breached by the Trump-supporting mob on Wednesday night. And the repercussions are still being felt. Last night, a chastened and tense president spoke words that had clearly been written for him.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack.
The change of tone and substance in just 24 hours is startling, whiplash-inducing. As they say on school essays, compare and contrast.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol. We have just been through an intense election, and emotions are high. But now tempers must be cooled and calm restored. You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. So go home. We love you. You're very special. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power. This moment calls for healing and reconciliation.
But from the reactivated presidential Twitter account today, an unsurprising statement. To all those who've asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January the 20th. Not that Joe Biden is shedding any tears.
That's what I am looking forward to. Him leaving office. I was told that on the way up here, way over here, that he indicated he wasn't going to show up at the inauguration. One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
In the wake of the riots and the president's incendiary words, he's faced multiple resignations and the threat of removal from office. That explains the astonishing volte-face from Donald Trump last night. He had no option. And there's this. Just before he spoke, it was confirmed that one of the Capitol policemen, Brian Sicknick, had died from injuries he received while trying to hold the rioters at bay. Today it was ordered that flags should fly at half-mast in his honour, but they're also flying at half-staff for American democracy.
And John, just 12 days left of President Trump's term in office, but a lot can happen in 12 days.
And it's going to be a very long 12 days, because you can see already that the Democrats are planning to draw up articles of impeachment to impeach him a second time in the House. Apparently this is being planned when the raid on the Congress was taking place, and they're going to accuse Donald Trump of intention to cause an insurrection. So that's that. There is also Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. She has been in touch with the commander of the US military to say the president should be stripped of the nuclear codes because he is not a reliable person. You've got the White House saying that this is going to sow further division. There are Republicans saying he ought to go. So that is the next 12 days. We don't know what Donald Trump might do or say next. Last night he was on auto cue. He might let rip if he's not. And so there's a lot of uncertainty. But let's look at where we are right now, because this has been a week of turbulence in a way that American history has not seen before. Yesterday, 4,000 people died in one day of COVID, the highest single total. Today, the jobless totals have gone up. As well as that, we have seen the assault on Congress. Americans are divided. They are angry. This is Donald Trump's legacy, but it's also Joe Biden's inheritance.
John, thank you. The former First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, has accused Nicola Sturgeon of misleading Parliament, calling her evidence to the inquiry into the handling of sexual harassment claims made against him simply untrue. Mr Salmond's comments emerged in a written submission to an investigation into whether Miss Sturgeon breached the ministerial code. The First Minister says she entirely rejects Mr Salmond's claims. Well, our Scotland correspondent Lorna Gordon is in Glasgow tonight. Lorna.
Yes, Sophie, this written submission by Mr Salmond is potentially explosive. It contains damning accusations and shows just how far apart these once close political allies, Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon, now are. In the submission, Mr Salmond alleges that statements Nicola Sturgeon made to the Scottish Parliament are, in his words, simply untrue. He goes on to claim that Parliament has been repeatedly misled on a number of occasions about the nature of a meeting involving both of them back in April 2018. He also claims that the First Minister allowed the Scottish Government to pursue the civil case against him despite having legal advice that it was likely to collapse. Well, Labour have described these as bombshell accusations, while the Scottish Conservatives have said that if the claims are proved to be correct, it would be a resignation matter, and said the allegations point to shocking, deliberate and corrupt actions at the heart of the Scottish Government. Well, this evening, a spokesperson for Nicola Sturgeon said that Mr Salmond was trying to malign the reputation of the First Minister with false conspiracy theories, and said the First Minister entirely rejects Mr Salmond's claims about the ministerial code. Both Mr Salmond and Ms Sturgeon will give evidence in person to the committee looking into the Scottish Government's handling of harassment complaints against him in the next few weeks.
Lorna Gordon, thank you. One of the biggest problems for both the NHS and care homes during this pandemic is staff shortages, with so many off work because they're sick or self-isolating. Some care services across the country have reported shortages of as much as 50%. The National Care Forum, which represents not-for-profit care providers, describe it as an important early warning of the mounting pressure within the care sector. Alison Holt reports.
Morning, Lee. Each morning here at the Glastonbury Care Home in Somerset, there's one question on the lips of staff.
Any new cases?
Yes.
No!
4 more cases.
Really?
3 staff, 1 resident, including a nurse.
Oh, no.
I know.
The home had its first coronavirus cases at Christmas, and since then, with the virus spreading rapidly in the community, regular testing is picking up more and more staff with the virus, often without symptoms.
More than 10 residents tested positive, 25% of staff tested positive, and we came in a situation where we lose staff from their shifts.
Here, a quarter of the staff are either sick or self-isolating, leaving the rest working extra long hours to fill in the gaps.
It's quite difficult when you have residents test positive and also staff members test positive, and we just keep going.
We find it very emotional at the moment because these are our second family. We care deeply about all the residents, but we are losing them.
The care is still there, but their boss says, like other homes, they're under huge pressure.
We're doing everything we can in terms of infection control. We know we're doing the best on that, but we're fighting something which is, very, very, very virulent. I think for all of us, I just want to protect those staff for doing everything they can and being so courageous.
The National Care Forum, which represents not-for-profit care providers, says they're hearing from residential and nursing homes across the country who are struggling with staff shortages. A few have lost 40 or 50% of their staff. Martin McGuigan runs dementia care homes in the north of England and Scotland.
We've got a service with 90 colleagues that's currently in an outbreak, and 36 of those colleagues have tested positive for COVID.
It means they are also asking remaining staff to do all they can to help.
The reality is, it is the toughest it's ever been. Yeah, it's that simple. It was really difficult. March, April, May. This is as bad as it's been in terms of what we're having to deal with, this new variant, etc. But this time we have the hope of the vaccine, and that is the thing that is keeping our colleagues going.
For many, it underlines the importance of vaccinating staff and residents as soon as possible, particularly if they're to do what they can to help overstretched hospitals. Alison Holt, BBC News.
From next week, anyone entering the UK, whether you live here or not, will have to have tested negative for COVID-19 no more than 3 days before arriving here. Children under 11, lorry drivers and travel from Ireland will be exempt, but passengers from countries not on the UK's approved list will still have to quarantine when they arrive. The lockdown in Wales is to remain in place for at least another 3 weeks. The First Minister, Mark Drakeford, has also warned some measures may need to be strengthened. He said that unless there was a significant drop in cases soon, school and college students were likely to continue their education online until the February half-term. Officials say the number of people with coronavirus in hospital in Scotland is now higher than it was at the peak of the first wave in April. The total is 1,530 compared with 1,520 last spring. The number of deaths registered yesterday is 93, the highest daily total during the second wave of the virus. In Northern Ireland, new lockdown restrictions have come into force, forbidding people from leaving home for non-essential reasons. People can be ordered home by the police if they do not have a reasonable excuse for being out. The law is in place until the 6th of February, but will be reviewed later this month. 2 women have been describing how they were surrounded by police in Derbyshire and fined £200 after they drove 5 miles for a walk by a reservoir. Current guidance says you can travel for exercise in England as long as it is in your local area. Tonight, Derbyshire Police said they are reviewing the fines issued in this period. Phil Mackey reports.
Eliza Moore and Jessica Allen, friends whose businesses have shut because of lockdown, decided to brave the cold and go for a socially distanced walk to try to keep their spirits up. Unfortunately, their trip to a nearby reservoir has earned them each a £200 fine. Derbyshire Police have been stopping people who are driving to beauty spots because they say it's a breach of COVID regulations. Jessica says she thought they were following the rules to the letter.
We take these guidelines really seriously. My brother's a doctor who worked on the COVID wards. My parents have both had it. We are trying to follow the rules. We haven't come out wanting to break the law. We're not having a party. There isn't 5 of us. We've simply come to what we thought was the safest place.
Derbyshire Police were accused in the first lockdown of being too heavy-handed after flying drones over walkers in the Peak District. Today officers have been out again, telling people to go home.
I've been coming to this park for most of my life, just out for daily exercise, and I've been turned away by the police.
The difficulty is in the interpretation of the rules. Derbyshire Police has released a statement in which it seems to say that if you have to drive somewhere to take exercise, then that's not local. And they've also said that it's very much at the discretion of individual officers as to whether or not to issue fines.
There can't be a grey area when it comes to what people are allowed to do, because this really is a lifeline for some people. So, for people that are struggling, they don't then need to be going out and thinking, am I going to be approached by the police for this? We need to know in black and white what is allowed, what is accepted.
Eliza and Jessica say they'll contest the fines. With the outlook bleak, mental and physical health remain critically important. Phil Mackey, BBC News.
A week after the UK formally left the EU, the Cabinet Minister Michael Gove says he expects significant additional disruption in the coming weeks as businesses get used to new export rules after Brexit. A number of companies, including Marks & Spencer and the parcel firm DPD, say they're experiencing problems with paperwork. Seafood exporters say they're also having problems with some catches being left to rot. Here's our economics editor, Faisal Islam.
The fishing industry is supposed to be one of the great Brexit winners, but in the first weeks of trade, many exporters of fish from every corner of the UK to the EU say they've been struggling with new rules and red tape.
We are not going to get the paperwork done in time. We've been inundated with paperwork, be it the catch certificate, the health certificate, the VAT, which is what is holding us up and the reason why we cannot buy this week, plus the import duties. At the moment, we're stuffed.
This Scottish fishing business has stopped sending boats out and started furloughing workers after new red tape and checks halted its European exports.
No, unfortunately, we've had to stop our boats from fishing, so just to save any other exposure to further losses, so we've had to stop that, and we're having to actually furlough a lot of staff.
It's not just fish. Some courier companies have paused their European road service, saying 20% of parcels have incomplete data, for example, new customs forms. That's a problem for this Queen's Export Award-winning popcorn business.
Well, previously it was really simple. There was no complexity at all with sending our popcorn overseas into Europe. Now paperwork requirements are higher, but also there's a lot of uncertainty with the shipping companies that we're using as to what documentation you do and don't need. They don't want to be stuck with any of our parcels in their warehouses on their lorries. So that's where the friction is. Yeah, so we've been getting parcels delivered into the local depots, being brought back and dropped off behind me as part of this process.
Right now, these issues do not amount to economy-wide disruption seen at major ports, for example, but nor are they just teething problems that are going to go away in the next few days. The government chose to prioritise regulatory freedom from the EU and not the existing free flow of goods with the European Union. That has consequences. We are starting to see them. Meanwhile, big retailers such as M&S said a third of food products were now affected by complex new trade rules. Its Percy Pig sweets, for example, are made in Germany and so can't be re-exported without trade taxes or tariffs to stores in Ireland, the Czech Republic and France. The government acknowledged problems and issues.
I expect that there will be additional disruption in the next few weeks, absolutely. But it's important that we recognise that if government does everything that it can and working with businesses, then we can make sure that we do get to a new normal.
Right now, there's only 2/5 of normal cross-channel lorry traffic. Next week, government expects a 3- or 4-fold increase. At the same time, an informal grace period on some checks across the channel also ends. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
2020 was the joint hottest year on record, alongside 2016. That's according to the European Union's Climate Monitoring Service. In the Arctic and parts of Siberia especially, abnormally warm conditions lasted most of the year. Globally, the average temperature was 1.25 degrees Celsius higher than during the pre-industrial period of 1850 to 1900. That's despite a 7% fall in fossil fuel burning due to the pandemic. Now, it's the biggest mismatch in FA Cup history. The non-league team Marine will take on Premier League's Tottenham Hotspur this Sunday at their small home ground on Merseyside. Marine's team taking on Spurs will feature NHS workers, teachers and a refuse collector. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss reports.
Dreaming of a football fairy tale.
Radford again. Oh, what a goal!
The FA Cup's seen a few over the years.
Oh, what a goal, Mickey Thomas!
But could Marine top the lot? Well, the Merseysiders have all the ingredients.
Would you believe it?
A last gasp winner in the previous round from a striker who's a PE teacher, while their midfielders a refuse collector, now hoping to dump Tottenham out of the cup.
Obviously seeing like the likes of Harry Kane and Mourinho and stuff, it's mad because you watch them on the telly week in, week out, you're watching them playing and then the next minute you're playing against them like you're going to be up against them in real life.
In fact, the gulf with Jose Mourinho's team is the biggest in FA Cup history. Tottenham are fourth in the Premier League, whereas Marine, well, you have to scroll down 8 divisions to find them, a gap of some 161 league places.
Well, you suspect Jose Mourinho will have never sat in a dugout that's overlooked by bedroom windows. Much of the ground here is surrounded by houses. There are even numbers to tell you which door to knock on if the ball goes into someone's garden.
The residents have become TV celebrities during Marine's run, and with no fans inside the ground, the likes of the McDonald's at number 11 will be using every vantage point.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've got a guy next door in a tree, Dave. You've got us, you've got the lady next door in a veranda with a champagne. So yeah, the atmosphere will be fantastic.
Can Marine do it? Could they beat Tottenham?
Stranger things have happened. At the end of the day, it's the FA Cup, isn't it?
And guess what? The team even have an FA Cup song. And how mighty they would be if they can pull off football's ultimate upset. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
And good luck to them. Well, you can watch Marine take on Spurs live on BBC One on Sunday from 4:30 p.m. That's it from us. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Good night.